So the other day while driving around the neighborhoods, the nicer neighborhoods that is, I found this just sitting at the curb. Of course I did the polite thing, knocked on the door, and I said, "Hey, is this trash?" And they were like, "Absolutely." And I was more than glad to take it because, well, that's typically what I do. So I got me a Dell Precision 490. I've already powered it up. It does work. And let's go ahead, let's talk about specs, a little history about it, and we'll see what we're going to do with it. So the Dell Precision 490 was released back in 2006 and cost anywhere from $5,000 and up US dollars, just depending on the specs that you had. Now this wasn't your typical desktop computer as it was a server. Came with Xeon CPUs, Microsoft Windows XP 64-bit edition, and was a pretty decent workhorse at the time. Now depending on the model that you got, you had dual Xeons, but the speeds range from 2 gigahertz upwards of 3 gigahertz. So the memory is DDR2 memory, and the low-end models typically came with 8 gigs of DDR2 memory and could be upgraded up to 32 gigs of DDR2 memory, and it had support for the memory if you're using Windows XP 64-bit edition. Now the graphics cards that came with this was the Quadro FX. This one came with the Quadro FX 380. They typically came with a 1 terabyte hard disk drive. Now higher-end models had 2 73 gig hard drives, and they were SCSI hard drives. The power supply was rated for 750 watts. It came with a IDE DVD drive. Some models came with a floppy drive, and others just came with a multi-reader. Many reviews at the time stated that this was a highly recommended workhorse. It was fast, it was compact, quiet, and some people enjoyed the aesthetics of it, claiming it to be good looking. That's a matter of opinion. So now what are we going to do with it? Well, I want to turn this into a Windows XP machine, obviously because it was designed for Windows XP 64, play some of those classic retro games. And the reason for it is because actually I had somebody come into the garage, they saw this, they asked some information about it, and I told them, hey, this is mostly going to be for Windows XP use and stuff like that. I said we could probably run some Windows 7. They said, nope, I want to buy this from you and I want to run strictly Windows XP and play some of those classic games. I said, all right, let's do some upgrades on it, and let's try to see if we could get some good performance and kind of make this maybe the ultimate Windows XP for the time period. Just depends on what we got lying around in the garage. So now we need to kind of move this open, just kind of so like that. Let's go ahead and pop out this graphics card, because let's just see. Let's go ahead and pop out this graphics card, which that came out pretty easy. Now we got a nice rat nest of wires, and we're just gonna kind of loosen everything up. There we go. Just kind of get that going right over there. And it has a mechanical drive, and I believe it's the 1 terabyte that this one came with. Yeah, it's a no, actually this one's a 250 gig hard drive, so we're definitely not going to be using that one, and we'll talk more about what we're going to be putting in there in just a second over here. Now one of the issues with these things, at least with this one, is that it's really loud. Even with the case closed and that whole sensor, wherever it is, I think it's somewhere around over here. Yeah, even with the sensor all depressed and all properly, it's just really loud. And yeah, nobody likes loud computers. And that was actually the nature of the beast with these older computers. They were just loud, and they did run hot. But we could put a better fan in there and just kind of get rid of that noise and be a lot happier. So now this graphics card that we took out of there is an NVIDIA Quadro FX 380. I think these were released back in 2009. Let me actually pull this up just to make sure I'm quoting this correctly. Yeah, they were released back in 2009, and they work good for what they do, but not for a gaming computer. At least I found for these old retro ones. Issues with the drivers, it's just more of a headache than what it's worth, so we're just going to put you away. So now I keep a lot of stuff, more than I probably should. And I found this that I got from an old computer that was tossed out, and we did some upgrades on it. I think it came out of a Core 2 quad system. Can't remember. But this is actually the EVGA GeForce 8800 GTS, released back in 2007. So we got a 2006 computer with a 2007 graphics card. This one has 512 megs. I know. 512 megs of DDR3 memory. 6-pin power. Blower style cooler, which would actually be good for this type of case. And yeah, this thing actually works, and it would be perfect for our Windows XP build. Now for storage, I'm going with a solid state drive, and here's why. Number one, they're quiet, and number two, it's going to actually help me clean up this mess that I got going on in here, so I can actually tuck this away a lot better. So now for the fans, what we're actually going to do is get rid of the fan setup that they have in there, because I'm not a huge fan of it. And we'll clean it up, and you guys will see that during the montage, and we'll talk about that afterwards. I'm actually going to pop in this 140 millimeter Noctua. This is the NFP14S Redux 1200. Now, the pins for it, at least as far as the fans I'm talking about, actually has the 5 pins, so you have to get those little adapters. All I'm going to do is use a SATA to 4 pin, and that will work perfectly fine, and that will be great. Yes, I know you're going to get those errors about the fans, but we really don't care about that for this retro build, and the customer is actually happy with that, and they says they just want this computer to run, use Windows XP, play those classic games, have a dedicated XP machine, and be relatively quiet. So that's what we're going to do. So now the first thing I want to do, and I think it's probably going to be the best bet for this one, is actually get rid of this right over here. We're not using mechanical hard drives. Yes, it has a 1 terabyte, but 120 gig solid state. The biggest game that I was actually able to find for Windows XP was like 5 gigs. That's more than enough space, and we could use a 256 gig if they need it later on. So let's go ahead and get rid of this, which there's actually 2 screws right over here, right on the side, and then we could get this out, and that's going to give us a lot of room for activities and stuff. So that definitely gives us a lot of room. Definitely happy with that. So now the next thing I want to do is I want to take off this stuff right over here, because there's a fan in there that's really loud and annoying. And from what I gather, once I take that out, I'll be able to tuck in this 140 millimeter fan. Oh yeah, I should be able to pop that in there because I'll have more room there. Wire this up, and that will actually give me a lot more airflow to help cool this thing down more efficient. Surprisingly, I've done some tests. I've worked with this a little bit just prior to recording, and the temperatures are not terrible. They're actually pretty good. Actually not using any fans, which wasn't the best idea, but still, it didn't overheat, so that's all that matters. So now I just want to kind of take this out. This is that 1394 port, which we're not going to use. Here's another fan that's loud and obnoxious. And let's see, we got to take this thing out. All right. More weight reduction. This fan is just massive. It's actually pretty cool. We could take our fan, we'll mount it right over here, and that'll actually give me pretty good airflow. Yeah, it's gonna actually work out pretty good. So it'll blow air through the coolers and then air through there to the memory, because the ECC DDR2 memory definitely gets hot. So all right, so we're good on that. So now let's take off these CPUs, put some fresh thermal paste on there. Well, take off these CPU coolers, put some fresh thermal paste in there. Unscrew these. More weight reduction. Well, glad we decided to do that. Thermal paste. Got some coverage over here and no coverage over here, so definitely have to address that issue. All right, tons of room. This looks a lot better. I'll be able to mount the fan over here. We'll put some fresh thermal paste on it, clean it up. Got a few more deleting action that I got to do, especially with this cable over here and a few more over here. So let's switch to the montage and some gaming, and we'll talk about everything when we come back. All right, so this thing actually came together pretty nicely. So let's talk about what we got going. So Windows XP x64 edition with Service Pack 2 installed, our Intel Xeons, 2 of them running at 3 gigahertz, and we're running 20 gigs of DDR2 ECC memory, as if you want to run all this memory, not that it made much of a difference for what we were doing with it, you have to run the 64-bit version of Windows XP. Now, as far as installing it, we went ahead and used this ancient technology called a CD-ROM drive, or this one's actually a DVD drive. I actually had a CD of Windows XP 64, went ahead and installed it. Now, you can do a USB install of it, but it's a little complicated and aggravating. It's just easier to have a CD or just get one. And if you don't have a CD-ROM drive or a CD burner for it, for the version you download, I mean, they're like $10, $15 on the whole Amazon Jungle website, so definitely something to consider. As far as drivers, I got onto the Dell's website, typed up the 490 Precision, and I was able to get all the drivers for it and everything installed without any issues. Typically you get lucky with that, but I'm noticing a lot of these manufacturers, they're getting rid of all these old driver support and they're getting harder to find. So if not, you probably got to surf the dark web a little bit just to get some of these drivers. For our graphics card, our NVIDIA 8800 GTS, that took a little trick to find those drivers, as NVIDIA didn't have the drivers for it, or maybe I wasn't searching for it properly, but I was able to find a website that had the drivers for it and installed without an issue. Now, the games that we played, I mean, these are the classics. What's really cool about it is I remember playing these games and playing them with like minimum specs and lucky to scrape around 20 to 25 frames per second at low settings, because the computer I had back then was nothing like this. And all the games we were able to play at 1280 by 1024, highest presets, everything you could think of. They ran smooth, they looked great, they ran awesome. Fallout 3, Elder Scrolls Oblivion, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, love that game. And Bioshock. Wolfenstein, I'm actually having some issues with it, and I've always had issues with the Return to Castle Wolfenstein. Not too sure what's going on with that one. And as far as Crysis, yeah, I can play Crysis, but can't seem to find my disc for that one. Gonna have to keep a lookout for that. So I will say, saving this old 16-year-old computer, definitely worth it for the customer satisfaction and what they're trying to do. And another thing that they also mentioned was that they want their kids to have that experience that we all used to have back in 2006, just gaming on this. Hey, to each their own, what the customer wants, what the customer gets. It's actually pretty cool. Would I actually build something like this for myself? Nah, it's a little bulky, it's a little heavy, and not something I would do. Plus, I kind of like the beige look better, and if I'm going to go nostalgia, I'll probably build a Pentium 4 PC and have a little more fun with that. But the advantages of this one is that you do get the SATA, so you could get the drive cheaper. I mean, 20 bucks for 120 gigs, and you have a little more graphics card options, so you can even like get a better gaming experience on some of these old games and max them out even more if you have to. Now, this old hardware, believe it or not, is actually becoming harder to find. Yeah, I know, right? It's becoming harder to find because a lot of people... So I'm actually going to be doing a lot more of these retro builds and just kind of going back and reliving some of these great memories and bringing these computers back to life. So kind of give you guys a sneak peek. I got 2 right up there. I'm not going to tell you too much of the specs on that, but you definitely want to stay tuned to those videos because we're definitely going to be bringing those back to life and kind of restoring them the best we can. So definitely stay tuned for that. Now, if you want a sneak peek of these builds and these computers coming up, definitely check out my TikTok channel as we do the nice 1-minute clip of just kind of showing what's going on in the garage before I do a full blown out video of our builds. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see what we come up with next.